Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Jim Stroud podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. Special guest, tell us, who are you and what do you do?
I am, sir, the ghost of Christmas past. Jim, I am Deepak Bhutra. I am here because I've been begging you to get me on your podcast because I want to really contribute. So I am a sales operations sales guy, 30 years in the corporate world. I exited. I'm an entrepreneur now, run my own show, and I'm right now trying to raise funds for a business idea of mine. And I'm extremely humbled that after 30 years of experience, people will trust me more. But nope, when it comes to taking money,
Well, thank you for being my guest. I do appreciate it. So many questions I want to ask. Um, and I guess based on our earlier conversations, why do capable hires start to struggle after joining certain organizations?
That's your first question. So deep. I got a hole there. Uh, Jim, you said this word certain organizations, right? I'm going to start
Yeah.
off by first saying, let's assume certain organization, of course, if it's something that's demonic, something that's very bad culture, then yes, I would expect that, right? But
Mm,
here's the fun part. I think your question is more about I'm actually in a good company, but something is going wrong here. What's happening? Tell me more. Here's what I've learned in 30 years, Jim. And this is really, really interesting. Most companies will tell you that they think they have a hiring problem, right? They've hired the wrong person. And I'm telling you, it's not that. It's an environmental problem. You got these people coming in, right? These people were successful somewhere else. What changes when they come to you? You said it's a
mm,
capable hire, right? You got to ask
right.
yourself. So what happened? Did the wardrobe change? Because usually when people come in for interviews, they got, snazzy threads, awesome makeup, amazing hair, including you and I. Most likely we have amazing hair at that time, right? Get the job. And here's the fun thing. When I ask the hiring manager, never ever do they acknowledge the fact that maybe the environment changed or something happened. They always say, we just made a bad hire decision. And one trick I can tell everyone on the call is that when a hiring manager admits that he made a hiring bad call, tell him, oh, that's notches against you then. Watch how behavior changes really fast, very quick. Because when
Hmm.
you start holding the hiring manager accountable for that failure, then things change. You cannot convince me, and I've seen this in many forms. And the system that people walk into is the
It's the
system
best quarter
that is
results
supposed
we've
to be
ever
when they
seen.
were hired. The system changes. It's typically not people's behavior. In fact, I would argue people that come into a new role tend to have a very different way of looking at the world for at least the first 2 years because they come in knowing that they have to unlearn and knowing they have to learn. So when
Hmm.
you come in and you see that you either, I'll give you a classic example. One of my customers told me, hey, Deepak, I joined, they promised me, and numbers I understood it was that I should get 12% more. I got only 2% after taxes because the tax structure changed along the way.
Ooh.
So now in that scenario, he had a conversation with them, told him that you're stupid for not having understood all that.
Hmm.
And he was telling me that, what do I do? Should I leave the company? And my argument was, you're going to leave the company for a mathematical misunderstanding, which you should have picked up. So this is also where pragmatism comes in. But in general, I would argue, sir, to answer your question, capable people find themselves in a very different environment. And it's like the boiled frog, right? The frog is in water, but he actually doesn't know he's going to die because the heat is rising slowly, slowly, slowly. And capable people need to actually realize that. And managers need to realize what changed that make this person go from 180 degrees. Something went wrong. So
Yeah.
the real question is, did we hire the right person? Nope. The question is, what did we put that person into? Look at that environment, that box, and then check that box.
So the things that you've put them through, to your point, uh, would it be things like internal systems like reporting or performance
Absolutely.
tracking or things like that?
Absolutely. Those are classic ways to destroy someone's productivity and mental state. You hire a
Hmm.
salesperson, you tell the salesperson, hey, we expect you to do business travel 90% of your time. He says, okay, cool. He comes in stealing himself. He's told the family that I'll only drop in over the weekends. He comes in, and the first thing that happens is he's not able to fly around anywhere because there's a budget cut. And because he
Hmm.
can't be with customers to fly around, he cannot position himself, present himself the right way. Many customers still believe that B2B selling is belly to belly selling, Jim. That's reality, right? So when you
Belly
do
to
these
belly. I
budgetary
like that.
belly to belly, that this is courtesy of my grandfather, the old timers. The
Hmm.
old timers always used to think in terms that would today people complain about political correctness and verbiage in words. And I'm very sure no one would say belly to belly. That is so obscene because you're visualizing the wrong stuff, dude. Don't do that. So my granddad used to talk, man to man. Think of it this way, man to man. Let's have a conversation man to man, eyeball to eyeball. Let's just get to the facts. That was the theme there. But Jim, can you imagine this person is now struggling to make his number and now he's coming under perennial threat because I'm a salesperson, right? And I'm a sales coach. This is the basic stuff that you'll be surprised. Then you walk in and you're told 90% of the time you need to sell. And then the company says, oh, by the way, we have this complex report that you need to submit every Friday at 4 o'clock, not before 4 o'clock and not after 4 o'clock, because there's a whole process we have. The file is extremely complex. It literally tracks every time you breathe in with a customer, every time
Hmm.
you have a stomach ache in front of a customer, tell us. And it's interesting. And this is
Wow.
with or without automation. Some companies are highly intrusive and they change the game plan. The game plan is changed. The quota changes. Jim, here's reality. Salesperson comes in, there were six colleagues. Two colleagues have now left the company. Someone decides at the top, we have no budget. Let's allocate the rest of the quota over the guys. Everyone gets excited, more money, more money. The next thing is they re-goal you because the company can't afford to also overpay overall, right? So they've cut the budget. So people have this thing that people don't check and understand. If the budget gets cut and you're getting that person's quota, what makes you think you're going to earn more? Because the budget got cut. And then people realize that, and that's how you have systemic change that causes people to start falling apart.
Hmm. Hmm. So
Long-winded, sir, but I
no, 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 no. It's a good answer. It makes you wonder, what should leaders examine before concluding they hired the wrong person? Because I'm sure this happens a lot.
I put it this way. In any experiment, you need to remove the confounding variables or all the stuff that is noise or all the stuff that contaminates the experiment, right?
Hmm.
So once you do that, you need to, it comes down to bare bones things, which is things that are in his control. And typically the way that I tell sales coaches or sales leaders to look at is he putting in the same time into CRM that he used to do before? If that time is increasing, ask him why is it increasing? With are you demanding it or is he doing it by his own choice? Because at the end of the day, Jim, the amount of time you spend in systems has a drop off at some point.
Sure.
It's like someone told me, Deepak, olive oil is good for you. And then I saw someone literally gobbling like 2 or 3 ounces a day in anything on salad on, and I'm like, I'm sure it's not. The whole point is moderation. Olive oil is good for you, but you can't chuck a gallon and tell me that that's good for you. There's a limit to it. So same thing with you look at those interventions, then look at mood. And the best way to look at mood is Jim language. You're sitting in a review and the guy is always defensive about his pipeline. Right there is another problem. Why is it defensive? Now you need to ask different style of questions. Instead of saying, how far are you from making a quota? The question you need to ask is, what deals do you need support on to make you exceed quota? And then he will lean forward and say, wow, yeah, these three deals. And that's how you realize that these are the three difficult deals. Because if you ask him, how far are you from making quota? He's never going to tell you that he's got three deals he's struggling with. You need to get it out of him because at the end of the day in sales, Jim, there's this illusion. I get paid a ton of money, therefore I need to take the nonsense, the pain. And if I talk about the fact that I am struggling, then I lose this aura. So people are going to ask, why am I paying this guy 300K? Then if he's
Hmm.
always lost, the illusion has to be maintained. And that's the fun part. And we'll talk about AI hopefully on this call as well. But salespeople use AI a lot, but you won't hear them talking about it because again, it takes away from that aura, right?
Right. Right. And I think that may be the reason why some recruiters, not just salespeople, but recruiters who are very experienced in what they do, when they feel like they've been rejected, they just can't seem to handle it in some way.
Ooh.
And it's like you've been doing this job for years, you're gonna get some no's.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
shouldn't let a little bit of rejection stymie your growth.
Yeah, here's the fun thing about rejection.
Yeah.
The issue is not rejection itself, Jim.
Mm,
It's not. Look, you and I are mature enough to know that you're not going to win 100% of your deals, right?
sure.
So what we try to explain to salespeople is, and it's a little mind shift. What do you want to win? He says 2/3. I says, cool. So your success metric is 1/3 loss. He looks at me like, sorry? I'm saying you will be satisfied if you lose up to a third of your deals, correct? No, 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 I need to win 100%. I said, no, no, I know that. But you just said if you win two-thirds, you will make your number something, right? There's a ratio. There's a ratio. The law of averages always applies. You may convince yourself that you're anti-gravity, you're not. So this is where I typically tell people, you will get a no. And now that you've established that a couple of no's is not a big deal, you've now separated the angst and pushed it to the back of your head because people react to angst. Two is the conversations. People are typically having conversations about how many people did I interview, how many people went through sales stage one, recruitment stage one, two, three, how many then attrited, how many went for an exit interview, and you're always looking at data and numbers. And I always tell people when you go into any situation, and if you're going to look at a person always from a recruiter's lens, then that person is like, management consultants. If you're going to be trained on the use of a hammer, all you see is nails. So to salespeople, I tell them you need to actually understand you're not doing a deal, you're not selling, you're serving. And when you're serving, your goal is paramount. I'm going to solve a problem that this customer has. I'm going to explain the value of this problem that I'm going to solve for him, and he will pay me for that privilege of solving his problem. And when you get paid, you're then going to go home and tell the wifey, "Yay, we can go out for dinner besides Valentine's Day, babe. Let's go." So it's so for me, I've always told salespeople, you're down. Here's the problem with the American way of selling, though, and I have to say this as a global citizen. You guys push through things. You had a loss, buckle up, man. Be a man about it. And then this is chest thumping. And when I saw that NFL player who actually, I think he had a chest impact and his
Mm,
heart actually stopped. I think if you remember that incident, right?
mm.
That's the first time I actually realized that chest thumping ain't a cool idea. So I've told people, no one's thumping my chest or anything, whatever. No. So Americans tend to assume that talking it up will get them through. The reality is it gets you through
Mm.
at that point. But you need to, it's like grieving. Jim, if you do not grieve the moment and you bottle it in, because, and it's happened to me during COVID, I lost my brother in law. I did not cry for 2 years. My family says, but we saw you crying all the time. But Jim, those were not deep tears. They were tears which were superficial coming because I could not have deep tears because his two kids suddenly looked at me and says, how are we going to get through the planet, the world? What's going to happen to us? So I went from a family of two to four.
Wow.
uh, Sister's finances was something I had to get into. And I tell you what, it left me reeling how much time it took for her to figure out what was happening with her life. So finally, when things started settling down, her kids once finished medical school, the other one's just finished his master's in acting at Pace. They are on track. That's when, Jim, the tension goes and you actually realize. And I had to seek external support. And that external support actually allowed me, there were no tears coming down my face, but my heart cried it out. And this is what's really important. So when I tell salespeople, you've lost a deal, I get that. Go for a walk. Walk away. Go take your time. But come back with a structured strategy that allows you to compartmentalize and move on. Now, it sounds very painful, but the point is we acknowledge one thing. If not this deal, then do you agree that the next deal you might be able to win? The answer is always yes. We might be able to win that. Then let's focus on that. Let's move on. So it's the what I call recuperation and reclaiming back and the coming back. We focus on that now, Jim. I don't focus on saying to you, don't say no, because a lot of sales coaches will tell you, so what? What you going to do about it, big boy? I mean, I was just watching a video with one of the top trainers in the US, and he says, "Hey, buddy, shake my hand." Shakes hand and says, "That is such a limp handshake. I would never buy from you." Can you imagine, Jim? You
Wow.
think you're building someone up by saying that stuff? You're not building
Wow.
anyone up. You're
Yeah.
not. The theory that you have to break someone down to build them up works with the Navy SEALs. It doesn't work with selling and stuff like that. Please stop. It's just so again, I get emotional when I see that, but I'm always I look at other sales coaches because I want to learn also, Jim. I wasn't born smart or intelligent, right? We learn. Every baby comes in, bawling, and our goal is not to go out bawling. So that's what I'm focused on right now.
This advice, I can see it being applied to recruiters. It's almost like recruiters need a coach because they're under constant pressure to fill a lot of recs. And sometimes they're not able to fill the recs, not because of their efforts, but because of maybe talent scarcity. Companies looking for a particular skill set. And even though there are so many layoffs going on right now, some people are out of work right now, it's still a challenge for some recruiters to find talent. So I know that they are very aggravated and under a lot of pressure. What advice would you give them?
If Jim, I've spent decades with recruiters, right?
Okay.
And I'm going to call out to the rockstar recruiters. The rockstar recruiters are very smart. They never overpromise. They're
Okay.
always very clear on the spec that you give them. If they start seeing a pattern that is forcing them to realize that either you gave a bad spec or you're asking for something too unique that's not doable, they're very good
Mm,
at figuring out compromises. And then comes the recruitment process. They look at the big picture. They look at people that can fit the role, but then they also look at the person that could potentially grow. But then they established with me, the hiring manager, whether that's a criteria for me or not. Certain companies have different cultures also, Jim, right?
mm,
Recruiters are a manifestation of that culture. And the best recruiters, Jim, they're always forceful in a very odd, unique way, which is, Jim, you're an A grade guy. I looked at this spec, and against this spec, I'm finding a lot of B grade guys. There's no ways, Jim, I can bring you a B grade guy. You need to either change the salary for this or you need to do something different. And here's my guidance to you. Jim, we need to get you A grade guys. Jim, do you think you're going to say no to that? It's the positioning statement that these recruiters do very well. And
mm.
then, Jim, the recruiters that I really see get tremendous admiration are the ones that, one, keep the pipeline running, but are also keeping the communications running. And I know it's like very difficult. Look, I've seen the Indian market. Jim, you advertise one job, 3,000 resumes in 1 hour.
Sure.
3,000. How are you going to say, communicate to so many people? So my response to recruiters is, here's the catch though, you never communicate. Forget you. Why can't you even have an automated process at least that sends an email and an SMS and then says, if you'd like to know more, please send me back a note and tell them we are swamped with applications and it's difficult for me to get back to each person, but I wanted to communicate to you so that you're aware. People will accept that. My mom always used to tell me, Deepak, if you go up to someone and you tell them why you're taking a decision and why you know that the decision will make them unhappy, but just acknowledging that makes people very hyper excited. So to any recruiter listening in, you will suffer a reputational harm because you don't do the basics right. And at the same time, the recruitment business is just scaling. What is expected of recruiters today, Jim, is far different from what was expected before. Today, recruiters are expected to be able to look at a resume and tell me if it's ChatGPT or Claude. They need to look at shiny objects and tell me which is less shinier and truly shinier. You're asking for a lot. Ultimately, automation and technology comes in. But here's the fun part. A recruiter's reputation depends on the judgment call in the moment. You just
Mm,
know that there's something wrong, but you can't put your finger on it. Rules of thumb. Those are the recruiters that actually know. They are what I would say augmented intelligence ATS square. They're not an ATS driven. And the second thing I would say to recruiters right now, Jim, which is a huge godsend, and I highly recommend they do it, is that I tested a couple of products and I did interviews with AI tools. Jim, my recommendation to recruiters is use this weapon to actually take off the pressure of you having to interview everyone. Make these early AI 15-minute reviews mandatory. The resume is going to self-select someone, automatically let them do the interview, and then you will not have to interview 10 people. You will interview 10 still, but the 10 now have gone through a very watertight filtration process. Because Jim, my own person, I can tell you right now, I've gone through 6 people for as an executive assistant for me in the last
okay.
1 year. On
Wow.
paper, they are shiny, Jim, but when you deal with them, they're not able to adapt, acclimatize to my needs or my demands. Now, you could say that, Deepak, you're a difficult manager. I don't think so. I've been a people manager since age 32, and I've had 800 people reporting to me at any given time sometimes when some of the roles I've done. So there's a huge responsibility, but recruiters that get it right are very tuned to me, the buyer, for lack of a word, since I'm a sales guy, the buyer,
Right.
and their comms is excellent. Their comms is excellent. They keep you updated and they challenge you back, but with solutions. They never give you problems. They always give you solutions with a problem. And there's no other way to put it, but that's true partnership. That's why I never call them recruiters. I used to just call them business partners or HR partners.
I like that. I like a lot of what I heard and what you said in there, especially towards the beginning, is around relationship management. And I think the best recruiters are the ones who can really manage relationships well. And I want to get your opinion on this. Someone
Mhm.
suggested to me that one way to really gauge the level of relationship management you have is to look in your personal life. How many people are close to you that you can manage people that are close to you? How many people around you that you sort of talk to, but they're not as close to you as others? Now, speak to that if you would. How can a recruiter look at their personal life and how they're managing their personal relationships and compare that to how they're managing relationships at work, especially among candidates
You
they
know,
don't know?
Jim, this is what I call an out of syllabus question. I plead the
Okay.
fifth. This is an excellent question, but I want to give you a very different answer to it because I know your intent.
Okay.
I would tell a recruiter as follows. When you look at your circle of influence is going to become your circle of affluence.
Sure.
Your prosperity in life is going to be the sum of the people that are around you that help you. So I've always said circle of influence, circle of affluence, and it sounds weird. Affluent, not effluent, because effluent I think is sewage. Sorry, this is the SAT English guy coming through, right? You got to memorize all those darn cards, right, for the for the words. When you look at your circle of influence, ask yourself a simple question. Does this represent a variety of thoughts, processes, and profiles?
Hmm.
Now, I'm going to be very careful here because if you have got friends that are from a same political mindset and you are actually first only focus on that, that is a problem with the recruiter right there. Recruiter needs to understand one thing. When you're sitting interviewing someone, even if they were to forcefully tell you that they believe in this and they believe in that or they don't believe in that, you cannot allow that to come into your mindset, right? And I've realized one thing, those recruiters which have a good baseline of relationships outside tend to have a different worldview as well, or are mature enough to know when to switch off. So this is one of those things. The second thing I always tell recruiters, I tell to people in general is that if you want to know what people think of you and whether your circle is thinking of you the right way, on a piece of paper, write down the three words that you'd like your circle to say about you. Now take those, go interview the circle and ask him if you write, I'm accountable, I have high integrity, and I deliver tremendous value. And if that guy actually says he's a comedian, keeps us laughing, always pays the for the food every time, and he's the first one to leave a party, we have a gap. Your
Sure.
personal brand is not living up to what you think it is compared to what your close circle is telling you it is. Now ask yourself a question. If I have been unfaithful in my activities with these three things as a brand, are you sure therefore that the circle you have is actually the circle that's been attracted to those three, or were they attracted to the other three, which now you realize is a liability? Because I
Hmm.
don't think you're going to gain much by someone telling you that he pays for us all the time. That just sounds weird to me. Or that he's the first one to leave a social event. That also doesn't sound like. So your metrics and measurements differ. You will get support from a circle where the metrics that they are supporting you on are what I call work accountability, time bound, integrity. Those are important virtues. They may not be hard skills, but they're soft skills. So, difficult question. It's a bit out of syllabus, but Jim, that's how I would answer it. I always tell people you are going to have to look at who you're hanging out with to see how they are moderating or creating a conflict for you. Because at the end of the day, your behavior when recruiting or interviewing people is going to reflect that. Your biases always come through as human beings, and we need to actively work against those biases. And most biases come from family, they come from the circle you keep. So if you are, so I don't know how to say this, Jim, without getting into trouble on this podcast, right? But most stereotypes, most blinkered thinking actually comes from the circle you keep, nowhere else. And that circle could be the church you go to. Honestly speaking, you could be
Hmm.
because you're always going to the same church, the same group of people. At the end of the day, you're looking at a slice of pie, and any other part of the pie ain't that cool anymore, even though it's the same pie. It's just one of those things, sir.
Wow. Wow. I think we could go on forever, but the time is creeping up on us. If someone wanted to reach out to you with more questions and or just to connect with you and network with you further, how could they find you online?
Because of the magic words you said, connect with you and find you online. LinkedIn, just holler my name, Deepak Bhutra. I'm the Deepak Bhutra with that spelling. This is where being 55 years old comes into handy, Jim, right? I got Deepak.Bhutra at Yahoo. I got all the emails, Gmail also Deepak.Bhutra. I captured them all. Now the new Deepak Bhutras are all 666 underscore N98, some shit, something, some stuff like that. LinkedIn, send me a DM. I'm more than happy to assist. My focus areas, Jim, is actually mindset, attitude for salespeople. I'm a sales coach, but I spend a lot of time, Jim, with 21 to 26-year old because I'll tell you one thing. My
Mm,
superpower is simple in life. I really believe that I have got to leave an impact. If I go back and look at my trajectory, I actually realize that I was very lucky in the first formative years to find people at work who actually took an interest in me as a human being and helped me. And now I look around and actually realize in a post-COVID world where everyone's literally a third of their time working from home, that ability to learn, and I still say it, you can be on a Zoom call, but when you learn in a room sitting where someone says, I have an idea, let's walk into a boardroom and let's draw something on a whiteboard out. That power cannot come from preordained or pre-scheduled Zoom calls. It just cannot. Spontaneity is something that humans have done for a very long time. You
mm,
suddenly you jump out of a bathtub, eureka, you run in out of the shower and you go start painting naked, right? Because something hit you. And that's the problem.
mm.
We have lost that. And now comes automation and AI. Oh, Jim, come on, man. It's taken a little bit of humanity that's left. I'm actually predicting, Jim, you and I are going to have lots of fun. We're going to actually find people willing to pay recruiters to be interviewed by them and not AI. Yeah.
Wow.
Another source of income, recruiters.
Quite possibly. Quite
Quite
possibly.
possibly. Yeah,
Because
it's
if
going to be
AI
fun.
is everywhere, the human experience becomes more valuable, I would think.
You would think, and unfortunately, you pick up the headlines and you see 30,000 people dumped by Oracle, whereas they
Yeah.
committed that they're going to add 100,000 people to the global economy. So who lied? That's the problem in the world that we live in. In fact, I would argue as we leave, Jim, recruiters have another big problem:
Mm,
trust. Trust and integrity. Today, we talk about trust of the people who send resumes full of lies. Forget
sure.
that for 1 second. I want you as a recruiter to now understand that you're now representing a company who is publicly saying some things but doing some things. How does a recruiter now maintain that facial expression or that while the world is on fire because of something that someone has just done? And I think recruiters are going to find themselves in constant trouble. I think it's been happening since the 90s in any case, Jim. Every for 2, 3 years, we have a cycle. There's a massive dump of people. Everyone goes back to work. Then we had COVID. But this time it's different. The depth of the impact and the way that when I look at the Oracle numbers, Jim, 70% of those cuts are coming from outside of the US.
Mm,
It's not just a number thing. It's not just a money thing. It's actually a number thing. Someone actually believes that the AI impact has optimized it. That is why India is right now, headlines in India is very different, Jim. Everyone's bashing up the big corporates because this is the first time where Indians are getting impacted like that by all these big tech companies. Because guess what? We were mopping up all the dollars and all the back office impact, right?
sure,
And
sure.
AI is actually very good at chopping the legs off from the lower end of the pyramid because it can automate low level activities, right? So everyone who thought that they're protected sitting offshore by this cost arbitrage are now exposed. Labor arbitrage, you got now an agent that for a couple of hours of electricity is going to do the job which you charge $1,000 for. That ratio is just not beatable.
Wow.
On that morbid note, I'm going to shut up now.
Well, I will see your morbid note and raise you this thought as we close. If AI is everywhere and companies are laying all these people off, who's going to buy their stuff?
Jim,
Because if you have a significant
this
number of people laid off, they
I'm
can't
trying to
afford to buy
explain to
anything.
people. Jim, you're onto something there. Do the
Yeah.
basic maths. 250 million people are expected to be impacted by AI. So when I look at the research as to how much are going to be added back, I don't cross between 80 to 100 million. Where 150 million people are going to just go overnight? And remember that 150
Yeah.
million people are the earning economical primary breadwinners. So that means that's not just 100 million. It's actually most likely 500 million people that have to be fed who just going to get impacted because each person is attached to a family of four or five, so on, so on. There is an impact. I don't think everyone's looking at that. Everyone's getting excited about how smart we're becoming at an individual level, but the collective is suffering.
Yeah. I think we have a topic for a future podcast.
And I'm ready for that as well. Thank you for having me, Jim.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for being on the Jim Stroud podcast.